Winner Stands Alone by Paulo Coelho. 3:47 a.m. The Beretta PX4 compact pistol is slightly larger than a mobile phone, weighs around 700 grams and can fire 10 shots. Small, light, invisible when carried in a pocket, its small caliber has one enormous advantage. Instead of passing through the victim's body, the bullet hits bones and smashes everything in its path. Obviously, the chances of surviving a shot of that caliber are fairly high. There are thousands of cases in which no vital artery was severed and victim had time to react and disarm his attacker. However, if the person firing the pistol is experienced enough, he can opt either for a quick death by aiming at the point between the eyes or at the heart, or a slower one by placing the barrel at a certain angle close to the ribs and squeezing the trigger. The person shot takes a while to realize that he has been mortally wounded and tries to fight back, run away, or call for help. The great advantage of this is that the victim has time to see his killer's face while his strength ebbs slowly away and he falls to the ground with little external loss of blood, still not fully understanding why this is happening to him. It is far from being the ideal weapon for experts. Nice and light in a lady's bag. No stopping power though. Someone in the British Secret Service tells James Bond in the first film in the series, meanwhile confiscating Bond's old pistol and handing him a new model. However, that advice applied only to professionals, and for what he now had in the mind, it was perfect. He had bought the Beretta on the black market so that it would be impossible to trace. There are 5 bullets in the magazine, though he intends to use only one, the tip of which he has marked with an X using a nail file. That way, when it is fired and hits something solid, it will break into 4 pieces. He will only use the Beretta as a last resort. There are other ways of extinguishing a world, of destroying a universe, and she will probably understand the message as soon as the first victim is found. She will know that he did it in the name of love and that he feels no resentment, but will take her back and ask no questions about her life during these past 2 years. He hopes that 6 months of careful planning will produce results, but he will only know for sure tomorrow morning. His plan is to allow the Furies, those ancient figures from the Greek mythology, to descend on their black wings to the blue and white landscape full of diamonds, boutiques, and high-speed cars of no one to use any no sorry boutiques and high-speed cars of no use to anyone because they carry only 2 passengers. With the little artifacts he has brought with him, all those dreams of power, success, fame, and money could be punctured in an instant. He would have gone up to his room because the scene he had been waiting to witness occurred at 11:11 p.m. Although he would have been prepared to wait for even longer. The man and his beautiful companion arrived, both of them in full evening dress, for yet another of those gala events that take place each night for every important supper and which attracted more people than any film premiere at the festival. Igor ignored the women. He shielded his face behind a French newspaper. A Russian newspaper would have aroused suspicions so that she wouldn't see him. An unnecessary precaution. Like all women who feel themselves to be queen of the world, she never looked at anyone else. Such women are there in order to shine and always avoid looking at what other people are wearing because even if other even if even if own even if their own clothes and accessories have cost them a fortune. The number of diamonds or a particularly exclusive outfit worn by someone else might make them feel depressed or bad-tempered or inferior. Her elegant silver-haired companion went over to the bar and ordered champagne, a necessary aperitif for a night that promised new contacts, good music, and a fine view of beach and yachts moored in the harbor. He noticed how extremely polite the man was, thinking the waitress sorry. He noticed how extremely polite the man was, thanking the waitress when she bought their drinks and giving her a large tip. The three of them knew each other. Igor felt a great wave of happiness as the adrenaline began to mingle with his blood. The following day he would make her fully aware of his presence there and at some point they would meet. God alone knew what would come of the meeting. Igor, an Orthodox Catholic, had made a promise and sworn an oath in a church in Moscow before the relics of Saint Mary Magdalene, which were in the Russian capital for a week, so that the faithful could worship them. He had queued for nearly 5 hours, and when he finally saw them, he felt sure that the whole thing was something dreamt up by the priest. He did not, however, want to run the risk of breaking his word, and so he had asked for her protection and help in achieving his goal without too much sacrifice. And he had promised, too, that when it was all over and he could at least return to his native land, he would commission a golden icon from a well-known artist who lived in a monastery in Novosibirsk. At 3 in the morning, the bar of the Hotel Martinez smells of cigarettes and sweat. By then Jimmy, who always wears different colored shoes, has stopped playing the piano and the waitress is exhausted. But the people who are still there refuse to leave. They want to stay in that lobby for at least another hour or even all night until something happens. They are already 4 days into the Cannes Film Festival and still nothing has happened. Every guest at every table is interested in but one, sorry. Every guest at every table is interested in but one thing, meeting the people with power. Pretty women are waiting for a producer to fall in love with and giving them a major role in the next movie. A few actors are taking amongst themselves, laughing and pretending that the whole business is a matter of complete indifference to them, but they always keep one eye on the door. Someone is about to arrive. Someone must arrive. Young directors full of ideas and with CVs listing the videos they made at university, who have read everything ever written about photography and script writing, are hoping for a stroke of luck. Perhaps meeting someone just back from a party who is looking for an empty table where he order a coffee and light a cigarette. Someone who's tired of giving to the same old places all the time and feels ready for a new adventure. How naive. If that did happen, the last things that the person would want to hear about is some really fresh angle on hackneyed subject. But despair can deceive the desperate. The people with power who do occasionally enter merely glance around and go up to their rooms, they're not worried. They have nothing to fear. The superclass does not forgive betrayals and they know their limitations. Whatever the legend may say, they didn't get where they are by trampling on others. On the other hand, there is some important new discovery to be made, be it in the world of cinema, music, or fashion, it will emerge only after much research and not in some hotel bar. The supercars are now making love to the girl who managed to gate crash the party and who is game for anything. They're taking off their makeup, studying lines on the faces, and thinking that it's time for some plastic surgery. Like looking at online news to see if the announcement they made earlier that day has been picked up by the media. They're taking the inevitable sleeping pills and drinking a tea that promises easy weight loss. They're ticking the boxes on the menu for the room service breakfast and hanging it on the door handle along with the sign saying do not disturb. The supercars are closing their eyes and thinking, I hope I get to sleep quickly. I've got a meeting tomorrow at 10. However, everyone knows that the bar in the Hotel Martinez is where the powerful people hang out, which means there's always a chance of meeting them. It doesn't even occur to the hopefuls that the powerful only talk to the powerful and that they need to get together now and then for lunches and suppers to lend a lure to the big festivals to feed the fantasy that the world of luxury and glamour is accessible to all those with the courage to pursue an idea to avoid any non-lucrative wars and to promote aggression between countries or companies where they feel this might bring them more power and more money, to pretend that they're happy even though they're now hostage to their own success, to continue struggling to increase their wealth and influence, even when both of those things are already vast, because the vanity of the superclass consists in competing with itself to see who is the top of the tops. In an ideal world, the powerful would talk to the actors, directors, designers, and writers who are now blurry-eyed with the tiredness and thinking about going back to the rented rooms in distant towns. So that tomorrow they can begin again the marathon of making requests, fixing possible meetings, and being endlessly ready and available. In the real world, the powerful are at this moment locked in their rooms, checking their emails, complaining that these festival parties are always the same, that their friend was wearing a bigger jewel than they were, and asking how come the yacht a competitor has just bought has a totally unique decor. Iyer has no one to talk to, nor does he want to talk to. The winner stands alone. Igor is a successful owner and president of a telephone company in Russia. A year ago, he reserved the best suite in Martinis, which makes everyone pay upfront for at least 12 nights, regardless of how long they'll be staying. He arrived this morning in his private jet, was driven to the hotel, where he took a bath and then went downstairs in the hope of witnessing one particular scene. At first, he was pestered by actresses, actor and directors until he came up with the perfect response for them all. Don't speak English, sorry, Polish. Or don't speak French, sorry, Mexican. When someone ventured a few words in Spanish, I would tried another ploy. He started writing down numbers in a notebook so as to look neither like a journalist, because everyone wants to meet journalists, nor a movie mogul. Beside him lay a Russian economics magazine. Most people can't tell Russian from Polish or Spanish with a photo of some boring executive on the covers. The denizens of the bar, who pride themselves on their keen understanding of the human race, leave Igor in peace, thinking that he must be one of those millionaires who come to the kings in search of a new girlfriend. That at least is the rumor doing the rounds by the time the fifth person has sat down at the table and ordered the mineral water, alleging that there are no other free seats. Igor is duly relegated to the category of perfume. Perfume is a slang term used by actresses or starlets as they're called at the festival, because as with perfumes, it's easy enough to change brands, but one of them might just turn out to be real find. Perfumes are sought out during the last 2 days of the festivals. If the actresses in question haven't managed to pick up anything or anyone of interest in the movie industry for the moment, then the strange, apparently wealthy man can wait. Actresses know that it's always best to leave the festival with a new boyfriend, whom they might later on be able to transform into film producer, than to move on to the next event and go through the same old ritual. Drinking, smiling, must keep smiling and pretending that they're not looking at anyone while your heart beats feverishly. Time ticks rapidly on and there are still gala nights to which you haven't been invited, but to which the perfumes have. They know what the perfumes are going to say because they always have the same thing, but they pretend to believe them anyway. I could change your life. A lot of women would like to be in your shoes. You're young now, but what will become of you in a few years' time? You need to think about making a longer term investment. I'm married, but my wife, this opening line can have various endings, is ill, has threatened to commit suicide if I leave her, etc. You're a princess and deserve to be treated like one. I didn't know it until now, but I've been waiting for you. I don't believe in coincidences, and I really think we ought to give this relationship a chance. It's always the same old spiel. The only variable is how many presents you get, preferably jewelry, which can be sold, how many invites to yacht parties, how many visiting cards you collect, how many times you have to listen to the same chat of lines, and whether you can wangle a ticket to the Formula One races where you'll get to mingle with the same class of people and where your big chance might be waiting for you. Perfume is also the word used by young actors to refer to the elderly millionairesses, all plastic and Botox, but who are at least more intelligent than their male counterparts. They never waste any time. They too arrive in final days of the festival knowing that money provides their only pulling power. The male perfumes deceive themselves. They think that the long legs and youthful faces have genuinely fallen for them and now can be manipulated at will. The female perfumes put all their trust in part of their diamonds. Iger knows nothing of all this. This is the first time at the festival and he has just realized that much to his surprise no one here seems very interested in films, except the people in that bar. He has leafed through a few magazines, opened the envelope in which his company has placed the invitations to the most prestigious parties, but not one of them is for a film premiere. Before traveling to France, he tried to find out which films were in the running and had great difficulty in obtaining this information. Then a friend said, forget about films, King is just a fashion show. Fashion. Whatever can people be thinking? Do you think fashion is something that changes according to the seasons of the year? Did they really come from all corners of the world to show off their dresses, their jewelry, the collection of shoes? They don't understand. Fashion is merely a way of saying, I belong to your world. I'm wearing the same uniform as your army, so don't shoot. Ever since groups of men and women have started living together in caves, fashion has been the only language everyone can understand, even complete strangers. We dress in the same way. I belong to your tribe. Let's gang up on the weaklings as a way of surviving. But some people believe that fashion is everything. Every 6 months they spend a fortune changing some tiny details in order to keep up with the membership of the very exclusive tribe of the rich. If they were to visit Silicon Valley where the billionaires of the IT industry wear plastic watches and beat-up jeans, they would understand that the world has changed. Everyone now seems to belong to the same social class. No one cares anymore about the size of the diamond or make of a tie or leather briefcase. In fact, ties and leather briefcases don't even exist in the part of the world. Nearby, however, is Hollywood, a relatively more powerful machine, albeit in decline, which still manages to convince the innocent to believe in horticulture dresses, horticulture, that's right, emerald necklaces, and stretch limos. And since there is what still appears in all magazines who would dare destroy a $1 billion industry involving advertisements, the sale of useless objects, and the invention of entirely unnecessary new trends and the creation of identical face creams all wearing different labels. How ridiculous! Iger cannot conceal his loathing for those whose decisions affect the lives of millions of honest, hardworking men and women leading dignified lives and glad to have their health, a home, and the love of their family. How perverse! How perverse! Just when everything seems to be in order and as families gather around the table to have supper, the phantom of the superclass appears selling impossible dreams, luxury, beauty, power, and the family falls apart. The father works overtime to be able to buy his son the latest trainers because if his son doesn't have a pair, he'll be ostracized at school. The wife weeps in silence because her friends have designer clothes and she has no money. Their adolescent children, instead of learning the real values of faith and hope, dream only of becoming singers or movie stars. Girls in provincial towns lose any real sense of themselves and start to think of going to the big city, prepared to do anything, absolutely anything, to get a particular piece of jewelry. A world that should be directed towards justice begins instead to focus on material things, which in 6 months' time will be worthless and have to be replaced. And that is how the whole circus ensures that the despicable creatures gathered together in kings remain at the top of the heap. Iger is untouched by this destructive power, for he has one of the most enviable jobs in the world. He continues to earn more money in a day than he could spend in a year. Even if even if he were to indulge in all possible pleasures, legal and illegal, he has no difficulty in finding women, regardless of whether they know how much money he has. He's tested it He's tested it out on more than one occasion and never failed yet. He has just turned 40, is in a good physical shape, and according to his annual checkup has no health problems. He has no debts either, and he doesn't have to wear a particular designer label to go to a particular restaurant, spend his holidays at a beach where everyone goes, or buy the watch just because some successful sportsman is promoting it. He can sign major contracts with a cheap ballpoint pen, wear comfortable, elegant jackets handmade by a tailor who has a small shop next to his office and which carry no label at all. He can do as he likes and doesn't have to prove to anyone that he's rich. He has an interesting job and loves what he does. Perhaps, perhaps that's the problem. He still loves what he does. He's sure that this is why the women who come into the bar some hours earlier is not sitting at his table with him. He tries to keep thinking to pass the time. He asks Crystal for another drink. He knows the waitress's name because an hour ago when the bar was empty, people are having supper, he asked for a glass of whiskey and she said that he looked sad and should eat something to cheer himself up. He thanked her for her concern and was glad that someone should care about his state of mind. He is perhaps the only one who knows the name of the waitress serving him. The others only want to know the names and, if possible, the job titles of people sitting at the tables and in the armchairs. He tries to keep thinking, but it's gone 3 o'clock in the morning, and the beautiful woman and her courteous companion, who by the way looks remarkably like him, have not reappeared. Maybe they went straight up to the room where they are now making love, and perhaps they're still drinking champagne on one of the yachts where the parties only begin, where the other parties are all coming to an end. Perhaps they're lying in bed, reading magazines, ignoring each other. Not that it matters. Are yours alone and tired and needs to sleep.